So the team named this presentation, and I was like, "I this sounds familiar," and I realized it's a Bruce Willis movie. And if you look for The Last Man Standing, you'll find a movie cover, and I tried to replicate it here for The Last Nest Standing. And it's actually a bit of a big deal, and it's something like I say. It's been various different things have kind of slowly. It's kind of dawned on me about the significance of something that we see, but we see it all the time, so we don't realize how important it is. But I'm going to give quite a bit of context to orientate us on this issue. So, like almost all parrot species, I think there's really only one that makes its own nest. The great green macaw nests in a cavity in a tree. This is a nest you've probably seen this picture before. Lots of familiar names on the chat here on the call. So I've used this picture because this is a gorgeous tree with a wonderful nest. It's also we have a live cam, and I'm just going to take the opportunity to highlight the fact that if you go to explore.org, you can find our live camera, and you can see this pair as they're going about their business. So macaws nest in these cavities in trees, and that's what our story is about today. Um, but in particular, one of the three sort of main things that sort of galvanized us was this incident that happened with this young macaw chick called Stitch. We named the team named this bird Stitch, even though she didn't actually need any stitches. She was close to fledging, but the tree she was growing up in fell down. Um, she was inside the nest cavity when it fell, so it must have been like a head-on collision, and pretty traumatic. And so there's no wonder she's kind of wide-eyed when we took this picture. So we got this phone call, and in some ways it was really great because it showed us that the people do care. These were not our neighbors. This was not anywhere near our reserve, but the not only did the people whose garden it was, they found out how to contact us. They did contact us, and it showed that they're not looking to keep the bird as a pet bird, but they wanted it to survive. So luckily, we were able to rescue her, and she got a second chance. We popped her into a nearby nest with a chick of the same age, and I've done this before in other contexts. And so she fledged as a wild bird, and we actually did some tracking, and we were able to see that she survived. And so that's much better than if she'd gone into captivity. But this is the first of several things that connected dots about the condition of the mountain almond trees. 90% of great green macaw nests are in mountain almond trees. They're these magnificent trees. They're 180 feet tall, and they tower above the canopy, as you can see here. When they bloom, their entire crown goes purple, and I learned this word fairly recently, they're multicentenarian. Means that they live for several hundred years, and it's estimated about 650 years. The tree produces an incredibly hard nut, which is the preferred food of the great green macaw as well. So the macaw is dependent on this tree for their nest sites and for their food. Now, Eleanor Roosevelt said, "The choices we make are ultimately our responsibility." So I think the great green macaw has to accept some responsibility here because they're too picky and they're lazy. Their favorite food is this nut, and they don't make their own nest. Oh, this is the nut. And the nut is so incredibly hard that the great green macaw has developed this massive beak so that it can actually crack these nuts open and eat the rich kernel that's inside. They're specialists. And actually, when I think about other macaws, they're also kind of special. Many of them are also kind of specialists, not all of them. Whereas other smaller parrots can be a bit more generalist. This is a fairly mature macaw with a nut, but this is one of the young birds that we bred in our breeding center, and it's interesting to see how the young birds struggle when they're trying to learn how to crack these nuts, and they get themselves into all sorts of positions. You can see here there's a seam between the two halves of the nuts. I'm not sure if you can see the cursor, but the nut splits in two, and they need to work the nut so that they can drive their chisel-like lower mandible in and split the nut open. But it takes a lot of strength, and they get themselves into all sorts of positions trying to open them up, and sometimes they just give up and drop the nut. So that's the food, but then there's this laziness piece where they don't make their own nests. They're dependent on trees, and they are obligate cavity nesters. They're not like woodpeckers, which can make their own nest. They also nest in cavities, but they make their own nest. Macaws, you find a nest that has come from where a branch on a tree has fallen down, or the tree trunk itself has opened up and created a space big enough for a pair of macaws. If they lose that nest, they're not like a garden bird. They can't make a nest of twigs, and so they'll lose their opportunity to breed. Luckily, this pair of great greens ousted this pair of scarlet macaws that were trying to take over their nest site. And this nest, you'll notice, has a notch out of the top. I'll show you this nest again in a moment. All of these pictures I'm going to show you are all of different unique nests, which is, it's kind of cool to show the range of nests that we have. Each year, a pair will nest in one of these cavities, and they rely on this tree for at least 4 months. During that time, at first they're kind of playing house and getting comfortable again. I haven't really included that time. They'll lay eggs, and that takes nearly a month. They take about 28 days to hatch. And so they're incubating during that time, and then they go on to brood the chicks. And this is another nest cavity which is just enormous. This is a young chick, and we're going to check on the chick. And so this nest is just so big that we can just climb inside and check the chick. And we take the chicks out. The different times we've done this work, we'll check the chicks over, see how they're developing, and we will be monitoring their productivity. You can see its feathers are just starting to emerge. On its tail in particular, you can see the quills and how the feathers are just emerging out the bottom. And at this age, Mrs. Parrot is still brooding the chicks because they're not able to thermoregulate. They're not able to maintain their own temperature. And this is, just another nest, different shape and size. Here, a chick's a bit bigger. You can see that they love it when we visit, and they can be pretty noisy when you go to check a nest. But by this age, they've got their feathers and they're able to look after themselves. So the parents are not in the nest at this point. So another nest, deep one. That's just an adult's tail feather here. It's not like some centipede or something. But yeah, they're just in these nests, and then at about 2.5 months of age, they'll start to climb up to the nest entrance and take a look at the outside world. Until this point, they've been living in a dark nest cavity, and some of these nests are like 10 feet deep, so they're really in the dark. But slowly they'll start to peer outside, and they look all cute. You can see these are chicks because they've got very dark eyes, and their features are very soft, and their beaks are not very scratched up. Here's another pair. This is a tree where the tree's bending over to the right, and then this one's another one where the tree's bending over to the left. This is a parent and a chick, and again you can see the chick has got this clean white skin. The parent's got the feathers on the chest are a bit more tatty. The beak's got more scratches. This parent's actually kind of blushing, which is an interesting thing as well. And they just look a bit more old, and their skin is just not as supple. Age kind of comes to all of us, it seems, even parrots. But they don't have oil of Olay available to them, or whatever it is. Probably said that wrong because I don't know the name. This is that nest again with the notch out of the top where the scarlet macaws were. The great greens claimed it back, and they produced a chip. And on average, the birds are producing between it's somewhere between 1 and 2 chicks on average. It's not unusual to see them with 2 chicks. So this annual cycle of productivity it's a wonderful thing, and we've been very fortunate to be able to observe it over several years now. But the thing we have to remember is that 9 out of 10 mountain almond trees have been cut down. And this started really in the 1950s when there was a growing demand for cattle and the meat to supply North America's booming fast food industry. Um, but the wood of the mountain almond tree it's an extremely hard wood, and it's desired for construction. And it wasn't until the 1980s, with the introduction of carbon steel, that we could actually uh, mill the wood efficiently and start to use it properly. And so this is the house on our reserve. If we roll out the red carpet, this is where you get to stay. And this wood has been left in the rainforest untreated for 30 years. It's so hard the termites can't get into it. It's incredible lumber. And so it was really sought after as a material for construction once the carbon steel chainsaws came along. So if we've got 75 mountain almond trees, as we have here, what that looks like is we've gone from a situation where we've had this many trees in the rainforest to this many trees. 9 out of 10 have been lost, and that's a lot less homes for baby parrots. It's a lot less food for the great green macaw population. Here you can see 2 mountain almond trees in the foreground that are blooming. Imagine there was 20 instead of just 2. That's what we've lost. It's sometimes hard to really picture that. Luckily, the situation was recognized in Costa Rica, and the mountain almond tree was officially protected in 1996. That's a great step, but we're still having deforestation, and since the year 2000, there's been a huge expansion of pineapple. Other tree species which are also important for the macaws are not protected, and they've been cleared. And I don't doubt that 1 or 2 mountain almond trees also disappeared along the process. It's not that deforestation is a thing of the past. This photograph was taken this year on the property neighboring our reserve. Our neighbor decided they wanted to take the lumber out of this tree, which was not a protected species and could be legally harvested. And so this is what we're up against. It's still happening. We're still losing habitat. But the mountain almond tree is protected, and so that should be a really good thing. This is our reserve on the left, and the border of our reserve shows what our neighbors have, which is pineapple plantation, and that's been transformed into pineapple very recently. It's only been in the last couple of years. The thing I want you to notice here is this single tree in the background there. This is a mountain almond tree. There it is, a little bit more zoomed in. It's protected, so it's not cut down, but it's left standing on its own. And so we end up with this situation where a monkey is never going to swing through the branches of that tree ever again. And I think that's terribly sad. Many of the bird species that would go into this tree, if it was in a forest canopy, won't fly over that open ground to get to this tree. So in terms of ecosystem function, in many ways, these trees are just living dead. And I think it's really tragic. This was actually something that was brought home to me. This is another one of those things that made me realize this situation, because this is me up a tree. I'm here, you can only kind of see my leg, checking a nest, while underneath me there was a bulldozer clearing the ground, and they were making way for a plantation. And it really hit home the situation where these trees are very, very vulnerable. It's not a unique thing. We've got mountain almond trees all over the range of the macaws that are standing on their own. And here you can see the Land Rover, which there's a few Land Rover cameos for scale. You might not have noticed the climber up in the tree here. Gives you an idea of where the macaws are nesting. So the macaws can reach these trees. They can fly across the pasture. That's not a problem. But these trees are not going to survive when when they're living on their own like this. This single tree has 3 great green macaw nests in it. It's magnificent. It's really an amazing tree. I've been up in this tree, and I love it, and I want to see it live a very long life. This is another tree, another mountain almond tree with clear sky almost all the way around it. And there are just so many. Here's another Land Rover cameo. Um, these trees are standing. This one's close to forest, but it's still in pasture. Um, this almost looks appealing to us. I think our ancestral roots were kind of. It's nice to have a bit of open ground and then a few trees for shade. It's kind of like an English country estate in the rainforest. Um, and although it might appeal to us, it might seem attractive in some ways. It's really a not a good situation when it's supposed to be continuous rainforest. These trees are meant to live in forest. And I can go on and on. There's just many more examples of these individual trees. The problem here is the trees fall into ill health, um, and they die young. I mean, this tree may only be 200 years old, which with our human lifespans, we think of that as a long time, but it might take 200 years before the tree forms a macaw cavity. And this is actually right here at this branch, this elbow of the tree looking at us. You can see a black hole, and that is a macaw nest. So this, if a pair was to nest in this tree, they could very, very reasonably face the same issue that Stitch faced, where the tree fell over while the birds were in the cavity. So this concerns us a lot, and it's almost worse than that, because there are people that are not happy, even if they've had to leave their mountain almond tree there and they're not happy. So this is an example where a mountain almond tree was burned, and that just accelerates the process by which the tree dies and they get the clearer ground. This is the other one that really it caught my. It was just unfortunately too. I was too slow to. I wish I'd documented this one better. I saw this kind of happening, but it was during the early days of our work in the north of Costa Rica, and this area had just been cleared for pineapple, and this mountain almond tree had been left, and then you can see like part of the mountain almond tree had fallen off, and then it was still trying to hang on, but sure enough, the tree is now gone. And the combination of the this was actually the first one, the bulldozer, and then Stitch. It heightened our awareness of the need to protect these trees. They're meant to live in forests. They're not meant to have cows trampling the soil at their base. So we can't afford to lose any more forests. And work. I'm just going to go over some of the work that we've already done. We've created our rainforest reserve, which is something we're hoping to expand on. Everything in this photo is protected, and that's thanks to incredible donors, many of whom have signed up for today's presentation and maybe on a call. I'm not checking the list at the moment, but if you are, thank you very much for your support that made this possible. This is Returno. It's the second of the two properties we bought, and this is when the camera's looking south. The cows have been removed from these pastures, and the team have been reforesting almost all of this. Almost all of this pasture is now reforested. There'll be continued work as there needs to be maintenance to ensure these young trees that have come out of the nursery, that they survive. It's not a simple process because the grass is very aggressive and wants to compete and take over. But the forest is being restored here, and that's something we're very proud of. It's through our work with the women rangers that we've developed this capacity for habitat restoration. They're doing wonderful work. They've got the native plant nursery that at different times the stock of plants in the nursery goes up and down depending on our reforestation work, but they can have up to 6,000 plants in the nursery and up to 100 different species of tree. It's really incredible work that they've done. And then when they plant these trees, the rate at which the trees grow when they're in the forest, when they're put back in the ground, is really remarkable. And so it can create a very quick impact that is going to benefit parrots very quickly and the rest of the species in this environment. Not only are the women rangers, as that program been successful, the women rangers are also working with high school students who have to do sort of community service hours as part of their schooling. This was the first year we did it. We had two fantastic students. And it was so popular that the next year we had a lot more students in the program. And this is something we want to continue doing because this is where we invest in the future for the forest and the parrot. And it's also a way of getting our message into the homes of families in the area as well. So this is just part of our outreach work. And as I mentioned, we've been restoring the pasture areas, and here we've got just an overhead shot, and it shows some of the experimental work we're doing, where we're testing whether we can use mulch to cardboard to mulch the trees and help keep the grass down. And so we've set this up as a bit of an experiment, and we're looking at how beneficial that is as a practice. So come back to this picture that looks to the south. That's where we've pretty much done the reforestation work, and you know, we talk about it as habitat restoration, but it's also a bit more than that. It's restoring an ecosystem, and we'll come back to that in a minute. If you basically turn the drone around, it's almost the same location, but now we're looking to the north. The left 2/3 of this pasture is also on the reserve, and this is the next bit of area that we're going to be replanting. And I'm very excited about that, and it'll be great. In order to not just have a negative relationship with our neighbor who was renting the pasture off the previous owner, we continued to rent the pasture to him until we were able to reforest it. But later this year, there'll be no more cows on this grassland area, and then we're going to be doing the reforestation work. So the pasture reforestation is great, and we see we think that that's really valuable work, and it's good to demonstrate the work. But we see this huge need and an opportunity to protect these last nests that are standing. We might not be able to reconnect them with the forest completely, but we want to find ways to restore that ecosystem function, and we want to do that because when we do that, we protect the trees themselves, and in doing so, we protect the macaws and make sure that those baby macaws have a place to live. I talked about a monkey swinging through the trees, and that's when we think about forests, that's what we tend to think about. But there's a growing awareness that there's so much more going on than just that. We think about the things that we can see, but beneath the surface, there's a whole another entire kingdom basically of stuff going on. We think about when we protect the macaws, we're protecting forest, which protects the ecosystem. It protects the plants and the animals. And of course, there's some animals living under the ground. There's creepy crawlies and worms and all that stuff. But there's a whole other kingdom that's predominantly underground, and that's the fungal kingdom. And it's just, as we get growing awareness of this, it kind of blows my mind about the importance of it. But it shouldn't be a surprise. Trees need shared resources. They don't live alone. They live in forests, or at least these rainforest trees that we're working with. They live in a connected landscape where they can share the resources with each other's. I imagine that you've heard of these ideas, this concept, and some sort of popularized through the idea of a mother tree that can share resources with its neighbors, and in particular its own seedlings. And if the younger trees don't have roots quite as deep and they're lacking water in dry periods, it's possible for the mother tree to share resources. And it does that through fungal networks, mycorrhizal communities, which I don't really even feel able to fully explain it, because it's just this fascinating thing that I'm learning about right now. The largest living organism on the planet is a fungus, largest single individual. But there's so much going on beneath the surface, and this is just one example. We think of the mycorrhizal networks as the roots of a tree, but in the kind of the other direction. But actually, we can't even see some of it, because some of these strands of mycorrhizae are 1/10 of the thickness of a human hair, but they're so important because they connect with tree roots. And so, I mean, we think about it, what we see is like the mushrooms, and they're kind of like the fruit of an apple tree that produces apples, and the fungus produces mushrooms, which then opens up and spreads the spores, which are like the seeds of an apple. But under the surface, these mycorrhizae are these extremely thin filaments are interwoven with tree roots, and where the tree is producing excess carbon in the form of sugars, the fungus is able to provide the tree to, in an exchange, is able to provide more access to water, and also to important chemicals like phosphorus and other nutrients are ammonium, I think it is, ammonium, and I think it's zinc as well. But just the importance of this is mind-boggling. And it's kind of, I found it kind of entertaining that we don't even have good imagery for this. This is kind of the stuff I found on the internet, which I thought was kind of entertaining. Of like, how do we show this? Well, we can't really, but it's just this vast interconnected web of fungi that plays a part. So it blows my mind that to protect the parrots, we need to think about mushrooms or at least fungus. Um, and it's this entire kingdom, and yet it's only really starting to be understood and protected. The IUCN, the governing body for conservation, which was established in 1948. That's the organization which lists the great green macaw as critically endangered and lists other species, the endangered status of other species. They've only developed a global strategy for fungal conservation this year. I mean, it's just mind-blowing. There's an entire other kingdom, and it's almost not been given any attention whatsoever. The impact can be profound. Here's an experiment where I think it's a food crop was grown, and the experimental conditions were in the foreground, we've got plants that were grown without fungal support, and plants in the background which had fungal fertilization or inoculation. So that this is really relevant. It's not hard to imagine that this is very important for these lone standing trees, that if they get cut off from other trees, they'll lose this ability. But also it's relevant for our restoration work itself. When we're planting trees out, that we should be considering this fungal stuff. This is just another resource. I'm just excited about what I'm starting to learn here. This is a network that one of our collaborators put me in touch with, and I'm just it's exciting to learn that just like animals and plants, there is areas of endemism and species richness, and so this is just a really cool thing that we're starting to get involved with and look as a way of supporting parrot conservation. So what are we going to do? Well, we're going to be taking these lone standing trees and making agreements with landowners. This one's a good example because this landowner's actually already fenced a small area around the tree base. And we're going to just try to work with landowners and expand that area. It may be that we need to rent the land. We're going to fence it to keep the cattle off, or Land Rover cameos. We're going to keep those off the roots of the trees to stop the compacting of the roots and the soil. And then we're looking to actually mulch the area with leaf litter from around the neighboring areas, so that it's getting locally specific microbacteria, the whole microbiome, I should say, of the rainforest. And then we're going to plant trees in this area as well to support the trees. If we do this and we can prevent this tree from dying, we might save hundreds of years of a tree growing. It might fast forward us, and we know that the macaws think this tree is an important tree. There's nest cavities there, so ensuring that this tree does not die is one of the most important conservation actions we can take right now, based on the knowledge we have available to us. we know we can do this because we've got really strong connections in the community, and this is a group of landowners that we're working with who have nests on their property, and they're supportive of conservation efforts. There's a mountain almond tree in the background in the photo there. And so we're going to be working with the local landowners and trying to achieve scale beyond our own reserve. And this is basically what we need to do in order to ensure a future for macaw chicks, which in turn ensures a future for the great green macaw as a species. And so we're really excited to be launching this initiative, and really, really keen to work together as a team to protect those last nests that are standing. It is a team effort, and we're really hoping that there'll be an interest to support this work. And we've already raised over $5,000 towards our goal, and I'm not going to be shy about it. We need more support to be able to do the work and to protect the trees and the great green macaw. I hope that you'll consider this as something you're interested to support. And thank you for your attention today. I'd love to hear questions, and I'll do my best to answer them if they get into areas that I'm learning about myself.